Hey, what's up guys? And welcome back to the channel. Tonight, we're getting into 3 creepy stories about the places that are supposed to feel normal. Your apartment, your job, and even your own front door. And that's what makes this batch so uncomfortable. These aren't monsters in the woods or some far-off haunted building. These are stories where something ordinary starts feeling just a little off, and the person living through it has to decide very quickly whether they're overreacting or actually in danger. We've got a mix of home invasion dread, workplace unease, and that awful feeling of realizing someone may know more about you than they should. So, like the video, subscribe if you're new, and let me know in the comments which one got under your skin the most. Now, let's get into the first story. I know this sounds fake, but it was a real rental, a real property manager, and a stupid little laundry closet behind my kitchen. I moved recently, and the first thing I did in the new place was pull the appliances out from the wall. The old place was a cheap first-floor unit in a 4-unit building on the edge of town. Everything worked if you didn't touch it too hard. The outlets were mismatched, and the laundry area was jammed behind the kitchen. It was a washer, an old dryer, a crooked shelf, and junk I didn't know where else to put. I barely used the dryer because the vent hose kept popping loose and blowing warm lint into the kitchen. This happened the week I moved out. My lease was ending, and the property manager, Dawn, kept doing that landlord thing, where they act friendly while reminding you about the security deposit. I needed the money, so I spent my last day cleaning and taking pictures of anything he might pin on me. When I got to the laundry area, I pulled out the mop and boxes. Under them was normal apartment filth. Gray lint, detergent crust, dead bugs. Then I moved the dryer just enough to fix the vent hose. That was when I saw the panel. It wasn't a secret door. It was a dirty rectangular service panel, low on the wall, painted the same beige as everything else. The hose and a box of cleaning stuff had blocked it the whole time I lived there. One side wasn't flat. The dust near the bottom looked disturbed, and when I put my hand near the gap, I felt warm air. At the time, I told myself, dryer vent, hot pipe, old building nonsense. Mostly, I was annoyed because I could already hear Dawn saying I broke it. When my shoulder bumped it, the loose side shifted. The bottom scraped the floor and old paint flaked off. I stood there with a rag in my hand, already tired of the place. Then I pulled it open, a few inches. Behind it was a narrow service space between my apartment and the vacant unit next door. Dawn had been renovating that unit for months, mostly meaning paint cans by the back steps. Inside were studs, old insulation, pipes, dirty subfloor. Enough room for a skinny person to crawl through if they really wanted to. It looked like maintenance access. Gross, cheap, but believable. Then I noticed the extension cord. A cheap brown cord came from deeper inside the service space, ran behind the dryer, went under one dryer leg, and plugged into my outlet. My outlet. That was when I stopped being just annoyed. I followed it with my phone light. Farther back, I could see what might have been a power strip. I didn't reach in. There was insulation hanging down, the floor looked damp, and I didn't want my hand anywhere near it. I closed the panel most of the way and tried to make it normal in my head. Maybe workers left it. Maybe an old tenant ran power through there. Maybe someone had squatted in the empty unit months ago. None of that was good, but it was normal enough to hold on to. Then I opened it again and looked harder. No mattress. No creepy wall of photos. Just small, gross signs that someone had been using the space. Cigarette butts in a soup can. A strip of fabric near a pipe. And trash that looked like mine. A torn piece of junk mail with my unit number on it. There was also the cardboard sleeve from one of those cheap frozen meals I bought all the time after work. Could have been coincidence. People eat the same garbage. Junk mail gets everywhere. But I hated seeing it back there. I took pictures and called Don. He sounded irritated. Before I finished explaining, I told him the panel was loose. There was a crawl space behind it, and an extension cord was plugged into my outlet. That finally made him pause. Then he told me to send clear pictures before I started saying the property was unsafe. So, yeah, not "are you okay?" More like "please don't create an expense." I didn't want to go near it again, but I also didn't want him seeing the dryer pulled out and the panel crooked the next morning, then deciding that came out of my deposit. So that evening, I went back to the laundry corner with my phone. The apartment was almost empty by then. The dryer was pulled out at an angle, the hose was loose, and the cord was still pinned under the back leg. I got one knee between the dryer and the door frame and held my phone low, trying to get the panel, the outlet, and the cord in one video. With my other hand, I lifted the cord, just enough to show where it went. Something pulled back, hard. My fingers slipped. Then the cord snapped tight again and jerked so hard the dryer scraped across the floor. It didn't feel like an attack. It felt like somebody panicking, because I had grabbed the one thing they needed hidden. The cord caught under the dryer leg. The dryer twisted toward me, my shoulder hit the shelf, and everything came down. Detergent hit the side of my head. A box of junk dumped screws and batteries down my neck and all over the tile. For a few seconds, I was stuck there, half kneeling, half twisted between the dryer, the door frame, and the open panel. My phone was on the floor, with the light shining sideways into the gap. And from inside the wall, I heard a person move. Not pipes, not settling, not a rat. A person. Fast scraping, insulation tearing, a dull knock against wood, like an elbow or knee hitting a stud. Then more shuffling, moving toward the empty unit next door. I shoved myself backward, hard enough to scrape my arm on the panel edge. I didn't grab my phone. I didn't grab the cord. I kicked the panel shut with my heel, stumbled through the kitchen, and ran outside with detergent running down my face. The police came later. I waited by my car because I refused to go back in alone. Don had to unlock the empty unit. They didn't find anyone. They found a bad window latch, a loose service panel Don claimed was old, and dirty marks near the baseboard. Enough for the officers to say someone could have been using the empty unit and the wall space, but not enough to say who. By the time they checked behind my dryer, the extension cord was gone. All that was left was the outlet, a bent plug end by the cover plate, and a fresh scratch where it had been yanked sideways. Don cared about the broken shelf. He changed the locks and said he would look into the window. I turned in my keys and fought him about the deposit. I live somewhere else now. First thing I did here was pull the appliances out to see what was behind them. I mean, the moment that cord pulled back from inside the wall, that is just nightmare fuel. Because up until then, you can still kind of lie to yourself. Maybe it's old wiring. Maybe maintenance left it. Maybe the building is just gross and falling apart. But when something on the other side pulls back, now it's not a theory anymore. There is a person in that space, close enough to hear you, close enough to react, and they've been using your home like it's part of theirs. And the fact that the landlord seemed more worried about the shelf and the deposit than the human being living in the wall, yeah, that makes it even worse. And somehow the next story gets uncomfortable in a totally different way. A hospital security guard was watching me, and I still don't think I can prove half of it. I've typed this out twice and deleted it because I know what people are going to ask. Did he threaten you? Did he touch you? Did he actually say he was following you? No. That's the part that made me feel crazy. He almost never said anything that couldn't be explained away. as him just doing his job. I worked night registration at a suburban hospital ER while I was finishing school. I checked people in, printed wristbands, answered phones, and tried to stay polite through the glass when someone was drunk or scared. The desk was always a mess after midnight. Visitor stickers stuck to the counter and floor. Blank passes sat by the printer. Callback sheets and shift swaps were nearby because people called out constantly. Security was around the corner. They had cameras on the lobby, ambulance bay, some corridors, and pieces of the staff lot. Hospital cameras are not like TV. There is always glare, a bad angle, or one door everyone swears lags. The guard was Aaron. Early 40s, shaved head, quiet voice, always holding coffee. And I'm saying this because it matters. At first, I liked him being there. One night, a man slapped the registration glass hard enough to knock over our pen cup because his brother had been taken back, and he wasn't allowed through. Aaron stepped between him and the desk until the officer by the entrance came over. After that, I thought of him as safe. Not a friend, just part of the building. He also used to remind us not to walk out alone through the south staff exit after 3 a.m. That door was fastest to the employee lot, but it opened near the loading dock where the ventilation units were loud enough to cover footsteps. The first comment that felt wrong was small. Near the end of a Tuesday shift, Aaron came by with a lost wallet from radiology. I signed the property log and he said, like it was nothing, you parked far again tonight. Last light, silver Civic with the college sticker. I looked up. I had never told him what I drove. He didn't react. He just tapped the paper with his pen so I'd initial it. So I told myself he had seen it on camera, or walked the lot, or maybe security just knew staff cars. It wasn't proof of anything, and I did not want to be the new girl, making a weird accusation over one comment. A few nights later, he mentioned my break. I had switched with another registrar, so instead of 2:30, I took 3:15. It was written on the paper schedule at the desk. When I came back, he was by the security door and said, late break tonight. Again, not proof. Security hears radio chatter. They see people moving around. The schedule was sitting out where half the department could see it. Every explanation I made for him was also kind of true. Then it kept happening. He knew I used the south staff door after my break. He knew I walked out with Marisol on Thursdays. He knew when I got called in for a sick night clerk, even though I didn't remember seeing him near the desk. The one that made my stomach drop was when he asked why I had stopped parking near the ambulatory entrance. Because I had stopped because of him. I had started parking closer to visitor overflow, where there were more people during shift changes. It was a longer walk, but I didn't have to pass the security desk if he was sitting there. He said it while checking in a visitor who had wandered back from imaging without a sticker. He peeled a fresh pass off the roll, handed it over, then looked at me and said, "You're adding a lot of steps parking over there," I said, trying to get my steps in. Stupid answer, but it came out before anything better did. After that, I stopped hanging around the security desk. I waited for someone else before going to the vending machines. A couple times, I went out through the main lobby instead of the staff exit, even though it was slower, and I felt ridiculous doing it. And this is the part I still get mad at myself for. I kept trying to make it normal. I kept thinking, well, he works security. Of course he notices routes. Of course he sees the lot. Pam, one of the senior registrars, noticed before I really told her. At first, she said, he's like that with everybody. He notices everything. Then she saw my face and told me to write it down, even if I thought it was nothing. So I kept a list in the back of my planner. Civic comment, late break, south exit, parking near ambulatory. Maybe nothing. The night I finally filed the incident report was ugly in the usual ER way. Flu season, 2 overdose patients, and a man in the waiting room calling every nurse a liar. My break got pushed twice, so when I finally stepped away, I used the staff-only corridor near the south exit. I badged through the inner door, and Aaron was there. Not walking past, not coming out of the security office, just standing by the badge reader. He smiled like we had run into each other by accident and said, "Camera on this exit glitches all the time. You really shouldn't use it alone." There was nothing in the words that sounded like a threat. That was the worst part. It sounded like safety advice. Same as always. I thanked him. I hate that I did that, but I did. Then I turned around and went back inside. When I got to registration, Pam looked at me once and said, "Write it." So I did. HR called later before I had slept. They asked the usual dry questions. Dates, witnesses, whether he had touched me, whether I believed there was an immediate threat. My supervisor kept using words like misunderstanding and interdepartmental issue. A few days later, Aaron was just gone from the night schedule. That was how I found out. No, sit down. No, we handled it. I looked at the printed sheet near the charge desk, and his name wasn't in the overnight column anymore. When I asked Pam, she shrugged and said, "I'd take the win." I tried to. HR called later and told me Aaron's badge access had been disabled and that I needed to report any further contact. I asked if he had been fired or transferred. She said she couldn't discuss personnel matters. So I asked whether he had access to old staff schedules or callback sheets. She said they were reviewing it and that paper materials were supposed to be disposed of in secure bins, which was not an answer. Half the paper in that building lived on counters and clipboards until someone remembered to throw it away. For about 2 weeks, things got easier. I parked closer to visitor overflow because they had more traffic during shift changes. I stopped using the south exit unless someone walked with me. The new guard barely spoke to me, which honestly made him my favorite person in the building. Then I picked up a day shift. That matters because I had told myself Aaron only knew my night routine. The staff lot after dark, the breaks, the south corridor. A day shift felt different. Loud, busy, normal. I clocked out a little after 4 and was walking toward my car when my phone rang from an unknown number. Usually I don't answer those. That day I did because I was waiting on a financial aid call and I was tired enough not to think. He said my name, not in a creepy whisper, just normal, almost friendly. I stopped near the crosswalk between the main lot and visitor overflow. There were people around. Aaron said, "I'm glad they moved you to days." I didn't say anything. Then he said, "You're parking over by visitor overflow now. That side's a longer walk alone." That was it. No threat, no movie nonsense. I hung up because that wasn't the south exit. That wasn't the old staff lot. That was where I had moved after the complaint. I filed a police report that evening. The officer wrote down what Aaron said, then told me to block the number and call if Aaron showed up on hospital property. HR said basically the same thing. After that, they kept me mostly on days until they didn't. The ER doesn't care that you have a situation with the former security guard. People call out, shifts open, and somebody still has to sit at registration. The last night I covered was supposed to end at 11 o'clock, but it turned into almost 1 o'clock because the waiting room was packed. Pam walked out with me. She acted like she just wanted to stretch her legs, but she had her keys threaded between her fingers. We went through the main lobby, not the south exit, past the officer at the doors and the vending machines. My car was under a light in visitor overflow. At first I thought it was a parking ticket. There was a piece of paper tucked under my driver's side wiper, folded over by the rubber blade. I said, "Are you kidding me?" because my first thought was that I had parked in the wrong section. Pam grabbed my sleeve before I touched it. It was a hospital visitor pass, one of the cheap paper ones from our desk printer, or one that looked exactly like ours. The date on it was that night's date. The ink was smeared from mist, and the corner had a dirty crease where the wiper pinned it down. There was no name on it, no message, nothing that proved who put it there. Security photographed it. The police added it to the report. That was about all it became on paper. I changed where I park again. I don't leave the building alone anymore. I ask security to check the cameras before I walk out. And every time before I get into my car, I check the wipers, the back seat, and the dark edge of the lot. What gets me about this one is how careful Aaron was with everything. Like, he almost never said the kind of thing you could point at and say, "There, that's the threat." He kept it just vague enough to make her question herself, which is honestly one of the scariest parts. Because knowing where someone parks when they take breaks, which exits they use, that is not normal attention. That is someone studying a routine. And then the visitor pass on the windshield. No message, no name, nothing dramatic, but somehow that makes it creepier. It's just proof that he could still get close. That one is deeply unsettling. And now we're going from a workplace that doesn't feel safe to a home that almost stops being safe in real time. I think I almost let a fake grocery delivery guy into my apartment when I was 17. I've gone back and forth on posting this because technically nothing happened. He didn't get in. I wasn't hurt. The police didn't catch anyone. But I still think about it. And the part I keep coming back to is not even the patio door. It's that I answered the call box. My mom and I lived in an older apartment complex. First floor, unit 1B. It wasn't some dangerous looking place. Just cheap carpet, bad blinds, little patios facing a courtyard and a parking lot. The buildings looked the same, so drivers got lost all the time. Our front door opened into the inside hallway, but the living room had a sliding glass door right onto a concrete path behind the units. I didn't think of it as a door back then. To me, it was where our cat Milo slept and watched people. My mom knew better. She kept a cut-down broom handle in the sliding track. I rolled my eyes, because I was 17 and apparently immortal, but it was there that night. She was working late. She had ordered groceries through an app, and my whole job was to wait for the bags and get the frozen stuff into the freezer. My brother was supposed to stop by too, because he had left a charger and some papers at our place. So I wasn't thinking I was alone in a horror movie. I was watching TV, half doing homework, waiting for groceries. Then the call box buzzed. That thing was awful. Old directory by unit number, buttons that stuck, speaker like a bad drive-through. People buzzed the wrong apartment pretty often, so I answered and said hello. There was a pause. Then a man said, "Delivery." Just that. I asked, "For who?" Another pause. "Grocery delivery." He didn't say the store. He didn't say my mom's name. He didn't ask for the access code. He sounded like he was waiting for me to tell him what he should already know. I opened the app while I was still holding the wall phone. The delivery window had started. A few items were marked found, but the driver info wasn't loading right, and that had happened before. There was just enough normal wrongness for me to explain it away. So I asked, "What store are you with?" He breathed into the speaker and said, "I've got your groceries. You want them or not?" I got irritated before I got scared. I thought he was just some rude driver juggling 3 orders. Then he said, "Is there an adult home?" That was when I stopped moving. I said, "My mom's busy. What unit are you trying to reach?" He said, "This is 1B, right?" I know how that sounds now, but in the moment, I told myself the unit number was on the directory outside. Maybe he read it, maybe the app was lagging, maybe he was weird, but not dangerous. You make excuses very fast, when the other option is admitting something is actually wrong. I told him I was going to verify the order, and hung up. After that, I texted my mom that the grocery guy had called and the app was acting weird. Then I texted my brother and asked if he was close. He was already on his way. I checked the front door, locked, chain on, nobody in the peephole. I refreshed the app and still got that stupid spinning driver thing. And no, I did not call 911 yet. I know some people would say I should have. Maybe they're right. But nobody had threatened me or knocked. I hadn't even seen a person. Milo was still on the rug by the patio glass. Then he got up. He didn't hiss or do some movie cat thing. He just lifted his head, stared at the glass, and walked fast into the hallway, low to the floor. A second later, I heard footsteps. Not in the hallway, outside the living room, on the concrete path behind the patios. I turned off the lamp before I even really thought about it. Then I moved to the side of the curtains. I didn't stand in front of the glass. I just pulled the edge back enough to look. There was a man standing at my sliding door. I couldn't see his face. The patio light was off, so he was mostly shoulders and dark clothes. But I could see his hand on the handle. He didn't knock. He put his fingers under the handle, lifted it up, and pulled toward himself. Slow, like he was checking if the door could pop out of the track or if the latch had any give. That was when I hit emergency call. The operator answered, and I whispered so quietly, she had to make me repeat myself. I messed up the address twice because my thumb was shaking while I tried to text my brother that the man was at the patio. The man must have heard me. He leaned closer to the glass and said, flat as anything, I'm at the door. That almost made it worse. He was still pretending, like if he kept using delivery words, I was supposed to ignore that he had walked from the front entrance to the back of my apartment. I told the operator there was a man trying my patio door. She asked if I was in a safe room, and before I could answer, he tapped the glass twice. You need to open up, he said. I could hear him better through the glass than through the call box. I hate that I remember that. Then he pulled the handle again, harder. The door jumped in the track. The latch made this cheap little click, and the broom handle scraped and shifted. It didn't fall out, but it moved. I saw it tilt. Then my brother called. I answered without thinking and got him and the operator talking at the same time. He was outside, but at the wrong entrance. He'd pulled up on the far side, where the directory showed the other building first. I could hear him cussing at the call box and yelling my name down the wrong walkway. I wanted him to shut up. I also wanted him to never stop making noise. The man at the patio froze. My brother kept hitting buttons. Somewhere in the courtyard, somebody else's apartment buzzed. A dog started barking. A light came on upstairs. Then someone above me opened a door and yelled, "What's going on?" The man let go. He didn't sprint away. He stepped backward off the patio slab, turned toward the parking lot, and walked fast between the cars. By the time my brother finally came around the right side of the building, the guy was gone. The police showed up after the courtyard had turned into a little crowd. My mom got there still wearing her work badge, looking sick. Two neighbors were outside in pajama pants. I was still holding my phone so hard my fingers hurt. The real delivery came about 20 minutes later. It was a tired woman in a hoodie with actual grocery bags, the right store, my mom's name in the app, everything. She looked scared when she saw the patrol cars, so at least we knew the first man wasn't our driver. The cameras didn't help much. The front camera caught somebody near the call box, but the angle was bad. The parking camera caught mostly cars. The patio side wasn't covered at all. A neighbor later told my mom the call box had been glitchy for months. Sometimes it left the last unit number lit up, after someone answered. Maintenance said that shouldn't happen, which is not the same as saying it didn't. My mom replaced the patio latch that week and had a real stop bar put in. We moved a few months later because she never slept right in that apartment again. I still don't know if he got our unit from the directory, from the call box screen, or if he just walked toward the first patio with a light on. I just know I keep a real stop bar in my own patio track now, and if the call box buzzes before an app gives me a name, I let it ring. The line that really hit me was him saying, "I'm at the door," while standing at the patio glass, because he was still pretending. He knew he wasn't at the right door. He knew this was not how a delivery works. But he kept using normal words, like if he said it confidently enough, she would doubt herself and open up. That is terrifying, especially when you remember she was 17 and alone, trying to make sense of something that was almost normal but just wrong enough. And thank God for that broom handle in the track, because that tiny bit of extra security may have changed the whole ending. That one is exactly why people trust their gut after one bad night forever. Yeah, that ending is just so frustrating, because even after everything, there's no clean answer. No person caught, no real explanation, just a missing cord, a damaged outlet, and the landlord somehow still focused on the wrong thing. I really hope the narrator is in a safer place now, because finding out someone may have been crawling around that close to your daily life is the kind of thing that sticks with you. But the next story shifts that fear from inside the walls to someone who was supposed to be protecting people.